It's really a fun topic. It's all about the imposter syndrome. Yes, it's that dreaded imposter syndrome. So, what exactly is the imposter syndrome? Well, I used to think that I was the only person kind of experiencing this. I used to think that I was never quite good enough. I was never quite um, the right person for the job. And so when you are experiencing the imposter syndrome, what happens is you always feel like you're you're a fraud. Like any minute now they're going to find out that I don't belong, and they're going to hire somebody who is much better than me to replace me because I'm just not the right person for this job. And so it becomes this thing. And the funny thing is when you look at some of the people who it has affected, um, it's really remarkable. People like Meryl Streep, people like Sheryl Sandberg, they've all said that they've experienced the imposter syndrome. How incredible is that? Maya Angelou, Tina Fey, comedian extraordinaire. Meryl Streep. I mean, is there not a better actress out there than Meryl Streep? And for her to feel like she has experienced that, kind of makes me feel a little bit better about myself. I hope it makes you feel better about yourself too. So let me break down a couple things for you, and you tell me if you have ever experienced that. So I talked about the feeling of feeling like a fraud, but there's also this feeling like I don't know enough. I really don't know enough to be in this position. Why are they putting me in this position? I remember when I was probably around 10 or 11, I think 11 years old. My family had moved back from Australia, back to Trinidad, and it was my last year in elementary school, and I was asked to read this passage over the morning announcements for the whole school. And I was petrified. I was completely petrified to have to do that. Not only because I felt like my confidence clearly wasn't that great back then anyway, so I didn't have very strong confidence. But in addition to that, I had an accent that I was so desperately trying to get rid of. I had an Australian accent that I was trying to get rid of. And now I'm being put in front of the entire school body to read this passage with words that I'm probably going to say that people are going to giggle at, because I got teased mercilessly for my accent. So people are going to giggle at the pronunciation of some of the words that I would say. And I was petrified. And the whole time I kept thinking, why are they asking me to do this? I am just not the right person for this. I'm not good enough. And that plagued me all the way through to the point of when I actually had to read. I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced so much that that I knew it. And I was standing there and I was shaking and I was reading it, but I survived. I survived, and everybody cheered and it was great. But I remember that feeling of just not being good enough and being so scared that I'd be ridiculed. And so having that expectation that someone is judging you and they're not going to think that you're good enough, because that's kind of where it comes from. You believing that they're not going to think you're good enough, far less you believing you're good enough. So over time, I've realized that every time I had to step into something bigger than me or bigger than what I had become accustomed to, bigger than what I've become used to, I would have this feeling of inadequacy, complete inadequacy. So tell me if you've ever feel that feeling of inadequacy, because a survey says that 70% of the US population at some time or other in their lives have experienced this imposter syndrome. So I know many of you out there have felt it. You're just not saying it, but you felt it. You know you have. This feeling that you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not tall enough. I'm telling you all the stuff that I used to feel, right? You're not tall enough. You're just not smart enough. Oh my gosh, that's such a big one. I am not smart enough to do this. They need to pick somebody else who is more qualified than I am, somebody else who knows more than I do, someone who has, better credentials than I do. And so this becomes a never-ending cycle in your head. And thankfully, you are here today watching this, whether you're watching it live or you're going to watch it on replay, and you have an opportunity now to reprogram and reframe some of those things, some of those thoughts, some of those things that are holding you back, because I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to give you some tried and true tested techniques that you can start to employ in your own life to kind of overcome some of those hurdles. So when you start feeling that mini little panic attack, you can reach into your tool bag and start using some of these tools. All right, deal? Hey, Alicia here. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you want to see more content like that, don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification buttons so that you don't miss out on a single episode when we go live.